Hello, my name is Teixeira. It's an honor to be here at the Sports Sciences Congress. So I'm a nutritionist with a PhD in human kinetics, exercise physiology, obtained from the Faculty of Human Kinetics of the University of Lisbon. I worked here under the supervision of Professors Cristina Monteiro and Catarina Matias while studying the effects of leucine metabolites, namely HMB and α-HICA, on performance, body composition, and biochemical markers of muscle damage in young resistance-trained men. I've also been a practitioner and an university professor of nutrition and sports and medical nutrition therapy. I'm currently the innovation manager for Battery, a biotechnology company that develops food supplements, and the director for the Battery Life Lab, so our research center. So, speaking a little bit about leucine metabolites. So, leucine metabolites are leucine derivatives that are synthesized between the muscle and the liver. The most researched metabolites are α-hydroxyisocaproic acid and α-ketoisocaproate, and of course β-hydroxy-β-methylbutyrate, so HMB. During my PhD, I studied only α-HICA and HMB. So, what are the mechanisms? Several mechanisms have been proposed. mTOR stimulation, MRF stimulation, IGF stimulus, but the main mechanism is still the ubiquitin proteasome pathway inhibition. Most of these results are studied in animal models and in vitro studies. So most research is performed not in humans. So all these mechanisms exist, they have been demonstrated, but mainly, like I said, in vitro studies and animal models. Still, the primary mechanism is the proteasome activity inhibition. Well, so what do human studies say? This is a very important study by William Kramer, one of the early studies. And he studied the effect of HMB calcium, so the first format, in increasing lean body mass and reducing body fat, and also performance. These are in fact of the sharp results. So this is a very important paper. It was the paper that basically placed HMB in the map, and the results are really extraordinary. So 9.3 kilograms of fat-free mass, or in this case lean body mass, reduction of 4.9% body fat, and an increase in squat, bench press, vertical jump, and of course an increase also in body mass. So, like I said, HMB calcium, the early form of HMB, had these results, and this was the study that placed HMB calcium in the map as one potential supplement to increase body fat-free mass and decrease fat mass. So what about α-HICA? So α-HICA, only one published study was performed in humans. These were in young soccer players with small increase in fat-free mass being found in the lower extremities, around 400 grams. So, like I said, it's an effect, it's important, but comparing 400 grams with 9.3 kilograms of lean body mass, it's a small effect. But still, it raised the spark on α-HICA, and it led to a lot of research and a lot of interest to α-HICA, like a new form, a new competitor to HMB. I decided to study leucine metabolites. The current state of the art when looking into systematic reviews and meta-analysis would be that HMB could be promising in elderly or diseased populations, and some equivocal results did exist in healthy subjects. Perhaps it could be interesting for injured athletes, untrained, or maybe to prevent muscle damage, because some studies showed, in fact, an effect on proxy markers of muscle damage like creatine kinase or other markers. So this was the state of the art when we decided to investigate leucine metabolites. So two forms of HMB exist in the market. The first form appeared on the latest years of the 90s, so it was the HMB calcium form, and another form exists, which is the free acid form that appeared around 2012. Okay, so the free acid form showed a faster peak plasma increase when compared with the previous calcium form, so 30 minutes versus 60 to 120 minutes. What would the research say from the standpoint of application? Would HMB free acid exert superior results to HMB calcium? So these are the first studies with HMB free acid, the most important ones. The first one by Jacob Wilson, so in 2014, and he studied the effects of HMB free acid in 20 resistance-trained young men during 12 weeks taking 3 grams a day of HMB-free acid. And the results were extraordinary. So he found gains of 7.4 kilograms of fat-free mass versus 2.1 kilograms in the placebo group. And he found a decrease in 5.4 kilograms of fat mass in the intervention group versus 1.7 kilograms in the placebo group. So these are really extraordinary results, and they sparked again the attention on HMB. Now with the new form, the free acid form, the calcium form had already been highlighted by the William Kramer study in 2009. 2 years later, Ryan Lowry from the same lab as Jacob Wilson performed another study combining HMB-free acids with ATP, so another supplement. The study is virtually identical to the Jacob Wilson study, so the same control group was used for both studies. The intervention group was different. And again, extraordinary results were reported. So 8.5 kilograms of fat-free mass in the intervention group, a reduction of 8.5% of fat mass. So it's really out of off-the-chart results. And just for putting this in perspective, the question is, would adding 400 milligrams of ATP a day explain 1.1 kilograms of fat-free mass extra gains when comparing with the Wilson study? Also, only the Kramer study could find similar results to those of the Lowry et al. Studies. And to put this again in perspective, these gains would be compared with 600 milligrams of testosterone enanthate weekly. And you would have to combine it with the sibutramine to get the same effect on reducing fat mass. So these were really extraordinary results, and they raised a lot of questions, of course. After all of this happened, the mainstream media and the public in general, after seeing the results from Kramer in 2009 with calcium form and these extraordinary results with the Wilson and Lowry with free acid form in 2014 and 16, the mainstream media said, well, we have finally the holy grail of increasing fat-free mass and reducing fat mass. So it was claimed that HMB-free acid would increase hypertrophy, strength, would reduce muscle damage, and increase anabolic hormones. Like Carl Sagan says, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and we decided in my PhD to investigate how extraordinary was the evidence and what could we find if we could reproduce in a certain way these results. It was our first paper published at Medicine, Science, Sports and Exercise, and we compared HMB calcium with HMB-free acid with α-HICA and a placebo group. So we had 4 groups. These were young resistance-trained individuals. We controlled the diet and training protocol, of course, and we measured muscle sickness, so as a proxy marker of hypertrophy, of true hypertrophy. And we found no effect, no differences between groups. Okay, so nothing was different. We also measured proxy markers of catabolism and muscle damage like creatine kinase and cortisol, and we found no differences between groups. So CK really raised during the study, and cortisol also, but only has a training effect, not related with any supplements. So no differences here regarding muscle damage, cortisol, or muscle sickness. And we also measured testosterone and NGF1, and we found no differences between groups, only an effect for CK and cortisol and muscle sickness associated with training. So what about DEXA measured body composition? We also performed the study using DEXA results, and again, no differences between groups, only training effects on trunk fat-free mass. So again, no differences. We controlled for total body water also using bioimpedance spectroscopy, and no effect of either supplement, either calcium or free acid forms of HMB, α-HICA, when comparing with placebo or between them. So the same effects. Regarding inflammation, again, same comparison, same for groups, same population, no effect of either supplement on inflammatory markers. So we're talking about interleucin 6, high sensitivity C-reactive protein, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. So these were measured 12 hours after training, so not immediately after training. After we published the first paper at Medicine, Science, Sports and Exercise, colleague Josie Jakubowski also published a paper comparing HMB calcium to leucine, and again she found no differences between HMB calcium and leucine. So she added either leucine or HMB calcium to whey and compared the effects through 12 weeks in resistance trained individuals, so 26 men. The same training protocol as the Wilson et al. Study was used, and again, no difference, and she concluded that HMB is not better than leucine to increase fat and bone free mass and muscle thickness. So perfectly aligned with our results. Afterwards, out of Brazil, out of Guilherme Artioli's lab, in collaboration with Hamilton and Rochelle, two great researchers, they also compared HMB calcium with free acid. They had two groups. We had 4 in our study, and again, they found no differences. They very well designed study, excellent study, and no differences between both forms of HMB and calcium, except for a small gain in 1 RM for leg press that was statistically significant in the HMB free acid group, but they argue that the meaningful, what does this mean is debatable at least. So all these results are aligned with ours, with the results out of our lab. So what might explain differences between studies? So the first thing could be total body water. So total body water will affect DEXA measured fat-free mass. Of course, some studies, like for instance, Nurkalik Mikalski studies on fighters used by impedance analysis, which might lead to an error, 8 to 10%. It will depend on the equations you used. It will depend how well you can control water. So this can also explain differences. Some issues have been raised with the Wilson et al. Study regarding standardization procedures of DEXA, of dual energy X-ray absorptiometry. So maybe this could also explain different results or the extraordinary results. The Wilson and the Lowry and the Kramer papers did not report absolute intakes of energy or macronutrients, only relative amounts. So this doesn't allow us to see how many grams per kilogram or how many kilocalories per kilo were in fact ingested. Some issues have been raised with the standard deviation for the Wilson et al. Study, same standard deviation for all variables analyzed. Of course, they used the least square of the mean. It increases the probability of the same standard deviation, but still it's an atypical result. And of course, another issue I already mentioned, the same control group was used in the Wilson and the Lowry et al. Study. So the Wilson is 2014, not 2013. So what do most recent meta-analyses say? Well, this is a recent meta-analysis out of Brett Hollands in collaboration with Brad Schoenfeld and of course James Krieger and Brendan Roberts. And they tried to understand how well would HMB apply to athletes. So this is a meta-analysis, systematic review and meta-analysis in athletes. And they found a small effect of 0.3 kilograms of fat-free mass in athletes. So no differences in fat mass or body mass, only gains in fat-free mass, a small gain, so 300 grams of fat-free mass, which I argue is not relevant for an athlete. We also performed the systematic review and meta-analysis. So I teamed up with Josie Jakubowski and other folks out of McMaster, out of Stu Phillips' lab, and we found only a small effect of 340 grams of body weight. So this could be argued that it is in fact maybe water, because we found no differences in fat-free mass or fat mass. So in conclusion, from the research we performed and other labs have also performed, we cannot recommend the use of these leucine metabolites, so either β-hydroxy-β-methylbutyrate, so HMB, either calcium or free acid form, to be used in young, healthy, resistance-trained individuals while consuming sufficient protein and energy to improve strength, power, body composition, hormonal markers, and modulate inflammation or muscle damage. Thank you very much.